For the pie crust, you could be lazy and buy a store-bought pie crust, nothing wrong with that, and there's quite a few vegan options, especially if you go to Whole Foods. And you could make a walnut oat crust using 2 cups of walnuts, I like using the chopped ones, and 1 cup of oats, 1/2 of a cup of maple syrup, and 1/2 of a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice mix. And for your regular flour crust, you could use 3 cups of flour. I used oat flour because I ground my oats, but you could use any kind, and 1/2 a cup of coconut oil melted. And 1/2 of a cup of sugar, 1/2 of a teaspoon of salt, and 1/3 of a cup of non-dairy milk. You could make a cashew pumpkin pie, and you would use 1 can of pumpkin puree and 1 cup of raw cashews, and you want to soak them for about 3 to 6 hours. 1/2 of a cup of maple syrup, 1/3 of a cup of non-dairy milk, and 1/2 of a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice mix. You could make some tofu pumpkin pie, and again you would use 1 can of pumpkin, 1 package of silken tofu, or I'm sure you could use any kind of tofu, I just always use silken, 1/2 of a cup of maple syrup, 1/3 of a cup of non-dairy milk, and 1/2 of a tablespoon of the pumpkin pie spice. And for your more standard pumpkin pie, you would just use 1 can of pumpkin puree, 2 tablespoons of ground flax seeds, 1/2 of a cup of maple syrup, 1/3 of a cup of full-fat coconut milk, and 1/2 of a tablespoon of pumpkin pie spice. Or instead of maple syrup, you could use 1/2 a cup to a whole cup of brown sugar. You want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to get started on the walnut oat crust. You want to put everything into a high-speed blender or a food processor. And if you're like afraid of all of the fat, you could definitely add more oats and less walnuts. But this way is really tasty, and it's Thanksgiving, so go for it. And you want to grease your pans or use parchment paper, or else the pie crust, both of them will stick. And just form a shape of a pie crust. It doesn't have to be perfect. As you see, I'm not perfect, but you know, it does the job. And we're going to make the cashew pumpkin filling. Again, I'm putting everything into a blender, and you do not have to make everything the way I'm doing it. You could definitely mix and match the crust and the filling. You know, play around with it, have fun. You might want to use one kind of crust and one kind of filling. And here I'm just putting the cashew filling into the walnut oat crust. And with this pie, it could be a no-bake pie. You could just stick it right in the fridge, and after it hardens up, you could just eat it like that. Or you could bake it in the oven, which is what I'm going to do for about a half an hour. And now I'm making the flour crust. You want to put the dry ingredients into a large bowl and just give that a quick stir. And in the middle, just add the coconut oil and the non-dairy milk. And give that a good mix. Now see here, I forgot to grease the pan, and I did have a little bit of difficulty when I went to cut the pie. It wasn't horrible, but that's why I said I definitely recommend greasing it, or if you don't want to do that, use some parchment paper. And you just want to take a fork and pierce some holes before you bake it. And you're going to bake this at 350 for 15 minutes. And now we're going to work on the tofu pumpkin filling. And yes, the blender's dirty. I just cannot see washing it just to dirty it up again. And for any of these fillings, if you happen to have vanilla extract, I would use it. I was just out of it. I would use 1 teaspoon, and that would really make the pie better, but I just was out of it. I'm going to add a little bit of cinnamon on top. And you want to bake this one a little bit longer, for about 45 to 55 minutes, because it's a softer texture and it's going to take a little bit longer. And for the flax seeds, you want to add that with 4 tablespoons of water and let that sit for a little bit, like 10 minutes. And in a large bowl, add all of the ingredients. And I use maple syrup, but brown sugar would probably be even better. I would use 1/2 cup to a whole cup, depending how sweet you like it. And I'm just topping these with some vegan whipped cream. If you would like the recipe for this, you could click above, and I'll also leave it down below. And you want to make sure that you put these pies in the refrigerator for at least a few hours. The longer the better, before eating. And this is what each of them look like. This is the cashew pumpkin pie, and it has a really nice, rich and creamy texture. And this is the tofu pumpkin pie. This also has a nice texture. It's more like a custard texture. And this is the regular pumpkin pie. Don't be put off by it. I did not put it in the fridge long enough before filming. After I put it back in, it got firmer and was quite nice. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you all have a very happy, healthy, and compassionate Thanksgiving. And I'm also going to leave a recipe at the end of this video for my sweet potato pie, which I'm not going to lie, I think that one's my favorite, even better than the pumpkin pie. I mean, they're all delicious, but yeah, that sweet potato pie is really good. So check that out, and thanks again for watching. See you next time, guys.
Sweet potato pie, you my sweet potato pie.